you start to think, okay, cool, like maybe that's a sign that I'm not capable of handling PT school level classes. Or what if the schools that I'm applying to see that I had a C or a D or an F and they think that I'm not good enough? So all of a sudden I start to feel like I'm not smart enough. And what also happens is are you smart enough to become a physical therapist? This is one of the biggest fears that students have who want to become physical therapists, but they have this internal doubt or fear or anxiety that either they won't get into physical therapy school because they're not smart enough, or their fear is that they will get into physical therapy school and they won't be able to handle how intense it is because they don't feel smart enough. So this is a fear that's going to be very important for us to teach you how to deal with, because if you're afraid that you won't be smart enough to get into PT school or even stay in PT school, then you will start acting like it, right? When I have certain things that I'm anxious about or stressed about and I start acting on them, then those things actually start coming true. Does that make sense? So if I act like I'm not smart enough, or if I fear that I'm not smart enough, then I'm always on edge. And I never trust myself. I never feel certain and confident in my ability to not only get into a program, but also crush it and get into my dream career of becoming a physical therapist. So if you want to become a physical therapist and you have at some point asked yourself that question, am I smart enough? What if I'm not smart enough? Then this video is exactly where you should be, or this training is exactly where you should be. And before I dive further, if you are new to the Pre-PT Grind platform, my name is Joseph Gugi. I'm a physical therapist. I've been a PT for years. I'm also a PT school acceptance coach and one of the co-founders of this platform, Pre-PT Grind, where for years we've been helping students get accepted into physical therapy school without wasting time or money. So if that's what you're looking for, then you're in the right place. Please be sure to enjoy this particular training and just binge on all the other free content that we have here for you. And yeah, let's dive in. So am I smart enough to become a physical therapist, or what if I'm not smart enough to become a physical therapist? Let's dive into it, right? Because this is, like I said, it's a big fear for a lot of students. But let's first of all lay out where it comes from, right? Because that fear does come from somewhere. It comes from three very specific places. Number one, if I have past or current grades that are not strong, right? So if I have a lower GPA, or if I had a semester where one of my harder classes or one of my prerequisite classes did not go as planned, then I feel like, like I got an F, or I got a D, or I got a C, or I got a B, whatever your standard of not good enough is. And you start to think, okay, cool, like maybe that's a sign that I'm not capable of handling PT school level classes. Or what if the schools that I'm applying to see that I had a C or a D or an F and they think that I'm not good enough? So all of a sudden I start to feel like I'm not smart enough. And what also happens is we compare, right? So we compare to other students, and we're seeing other students that have maybe a 4.0. And if you have a 4.0, congratulations to you, you're crushing it. If you do not have a 4.0, that's not a reason for you to feel terrible, right? And so most of us start comparing ourselves to other people. And so that's the first reason. That's one of the reasons why many of us feel like we're not smart enough. And so we're going to dive into it, but I just want to kind of first of all lay out why we feel that way so that you can ask yourself, is that what's affecting me? Is that my reason for why I feel like I'm not smart enough to become a physical therapist? Or maybe right now you feel great, but some days you feel like you're not smart enough. So on those days, is this the reason that's kind of causing that to become the emotion or feeling that you're having? So that's one reason. The second reason is what we've been told by others. I had a student 2 weeks ago, actually no, about a week and a half ago, that I spoke to on a call, and she told me that her fear was basically that she was not going to be smart enough, because anytime she told her family members that she was pursuing physical therapy, whether it was relatives or cousins or uncles or aunts, they would always say, "Ooh, that's a pretty hard career to get into. Do you have a backup?" Y'all, I can't tell you how a statement like that can mess with your mind. And if you've ever had someone tell you that, you know how it feels. You know how, I mean, it's almost like taking the fears that you already have and then someone says it to you and it just becomes this mountain of fear and doubt. And it sucks, because it actually holds you back from tapping into what you're into what you're actually capable of, right? But that's the second reason, what we've been told by other people. Here's the third reason. The third reason is our own internal fears and beliefs, right? So what do you believe about yourself, right? What do you fear about yourself? And what do you tell yourself? Because the person that you talk to more than anybody else every single day is yourself. You tell yourself everything. Anytime you feel amazing, you're telling yourself a story of something you've done that's amazing or why you're amazing as a person. Anytime you feel down, it's because you're telling yourself a story in your head that's basically bringing you down. Maybe you're telling yourself a story based off of what you think other people are saying about you or what you think schools are going to say. And a lot of it's assumptions, a lot of it's made up, right? But we believe it. And because I believe it about myself, then it actually leads me to feel like I'm not good enough or I'm not capable enough or I'm not smart enough for the sake of this particular training, right? And so those are the big three reasons. So first of all, ask yourself, are one of those three or all of them affecting my ability to feel like I am smart enough to become a physical therapist? Because if they are, we need to start addressing those directly. Does that make sense? And so let's talk about the truths, right? So those are the things that you've maybe been exposed to or things that have led to you feel like you're not smart enough. But here's the truth. Let's shift things a little bit. Number one, you have every ability. If becoming a physical therapist is your dream career, right, then you have every ability to become a physical therapist. I really do not care what your academic history has been. We've had students that we've worked with that have had some of the lowest GPAs, struggled academically, and they've made some of the not just the best PT student, but some of the best physical therapists that I know. And so you have every ability. If this is your calling, it's your calling. Now, we just got to figure out how to get you out of your head so that you can start showing up as the student that has the ability to get into PT school or has the ability to become a physical therapist, knowing that you're smart enough. The other thing too is none of the three things should actually hold you back. I just need you to start identifying it. Most of us feel certain things, whether it's feeling like we're not good enough or feel like we're not smart enough, but we don't actually go to the source and start challenging the source, right? So if I'm being told by other people, oh, it's hard, well, ask yourself, has that person ever become a physical therapist? Has that person, are they living a life that where they're happy with the decisions they made? Like, would I happily trade places with that person? If the answer is no, then ignore it, right? And I know that sometimes that's harsh or it feels harsh because many times it's family members or people that are close to us, but ignore that type of advice because everybody has an opinion. Can y'all put that in the comments real quick? Everybody has an opinion. You don't have to listen to it, right? Because an opinion is free. An opinion is made up. An opinion is just one person's way of looking at the world based off of the decisions they've made, right? But what I want you to start doing is start looking at the facts, like what's actually in front of you. If they have not done what you're trying to do, then they have no place in trying to help you get to where you're trying to go. So for them, maybe for them, they think it's impossible because they heard it from a relative or they heard it from somebody at church or at school or at, on the soccer field or whatever. They heard someone else say that, getting into PT school is hard, or their granddaughter didn't get accepted. And so now they're like, oh, I've heard things, right? I'll tell you all this because I got people that I know personally or relatives that do the same exact thing. And so if your people or whoever you have around you has said things like that to you, you're not the only one, right? But start challenging it. Start being objective about it, right? If it's your past or current grades, then I'm about to give you a solution here in just a second. And then, of course, if it's your own internal fears and beliefs, start challenging, start questioning your own fears and beliefs. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Okay, what if I'm good enough? Start challenging it. What if you do have what it takes? What if you do become a physical therapist? What if you do get accepted, right? Start shifting the conversation you're having in your mind and start noticing that you'll actually stop acting out of anxiety and you'll start acting out of anticipation, a lot of excitement, kind of like the night before your birthday as a kid, or the night if you celebrate Christmas, the night before Christmas when you have gifts that you're going to open, or it's the night before your birthday and you're like 5 years old and you have friends that are going to come over and you're like, oh my goodness, crazy, and you can hardly sleep. That's anticipation. That's what starts to happen when you start to expect the best case scenario. And that's part of helping you unlearn how you've talked to yourself, because we beat ourselves up internally more than anyone else does, more than anyone else's words. That's one of the reasons why if someone doubts you or if someone says, oh, it must be hard, or are you sure you have a backup plan? The reason why that actually hurts, the reason why it's hard to hear that is because we've said the same things to ourselves. And because we've said the same things to ourselves, now someone else is saying it, some outside voice is saying it. So it's like, oh my goodness, they must be right. What am I thinking trying to become a physical therapist, right? And so, or what am I thinking trying to take these super hard classes like chemistry and physics and trying to get A's in them? I never do well in tests. I never do well in grades. Those are stories you have told yourself. I can't tell y'all how many times I've had students tell me, I just don't do well at standardized tests. You've just never learned how to do a standardized test the right way. You just never learned how to study for one the right way. I've heard students say, well, I just don't do well in classes. Well, you just never learned how to learn or learn how to, like, y'all, that's the key right here, actually. Like, pay close attention to what I'm about to say, right? One of the biggest things, if you don't feel smart enough, understand that there's a way to solve whatever the root cause is. And if the root cause is my grades are not strong, or I don't feel like I'm doing well academically, or I am doing well right now as an undergrad student, but I fear that when I get to PT school, I'm not going to make it, right? The key is most of us have just never been taught how to learn properly. Follow me here. Most of us, think about it, right? When you were in high school, how did you prepare for exams? You memorized things. When you were in college, a lot of the things that you've done in college, right? Or if you're in college, or if you've already finished college, a lot of the strategies that you've used in college to learn are very similar to what you did in high school. You just maybe refined it, gotten a little better at it. For some people it works, for others it doesn't. But most of us still have never really mastered like a really good learning process. And what I mean by that is this. Take a look at what happens 1 to 2 days after you take a test, right? The night before a test, you're like, all right, I have all this information that I've crammed in. But 1 to 2 days after an exam, what happens? You're like, wait a minute. Like, if someone asked you questions from the exam 2 days later, you wouldn't know anything. Or you would know maybe half the material or a quarter of the material because you never actually learned it. All you did was basically held it in short-term memory, hoped that the teacher asked the right questions, and hopefully you just gave the right answers. And that's the problem. Most classes where students struggle, it's just because you've never been taught how to properly learn, how to properly retain information, and how to properly apply that information. Like, this is huge. This is huge. Number one, like, even with students that we've worked with that have had 2.4 GPAs, 2.6 GPAs, 2.8 GPAs that have ultimately gotten into PT school, when they were retaking prerequisite classes, that's how they got better grades. They actually learned better strategies that helped them actually retain the information more and apply it better. And that's the key, right? It's one of the reasons why when you go to study for finals, like, how many of you ever feel like, oh my goodness, I'm just not good at finals exams? Okay, like, think about it, right? So the reason is because you never learned the material throughout. So what's happening is during your finals week, you're basically relearning information again as if you hadn't learned it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks prior, right? Because you never actually learned the material. Imagine if you had actually learned it along the way, but then now when it came time for finals, or now when it came time for exams, you actually were only reviewing because you knew the material, you were just freshening it up and making sure it was clear. And that's what would allow you to have better grades. So when students can actually learn that, they not only do better in college, but they actually do much better in PT school, because PT school is basically accelerated information being thrown at you. I think one of the best analogies that I've ever heard is, high school is like drinking out of a straw. College is like drinking out of a hose, right? So just the rate of how water is coming at you. And PT school is like drinking out of a fire hydrant, right? It's just a lot of information, and you just have to take it in, apply it, and so on and so forth, right? And so for students that struggle, or students that feel like they're not smart enough, it's not that they're not smart enough, it's just that they've never been taught how to catch the information, retain it better, and apply it, right? If you can start working on your learning strategies, your study strategies, your retention strategies, you will be as good as any other applicant. So if grades are the issue, don't let that hold you back from feeling like you're not smart enough to become a physical therapist. Because if this is your calling, go for it. Lock in, take care of business, go for it. If it's what you've been told by others, I already told you how to navigate through that. If it's your own internal beliefs and fears, I already told you how to navigate that. But that's the key. If you don't feel like you're smart enough, it's not because you're not smart enough. It's just because you're not solving the root problem. The root problem is the key. If you can learn how to solve the root problem, then you will not only feel smart, but you will show up as someone that belongs exactly where you are right now, which is either as a pre-PT or as a student that's applying to physical therapy school, or as a physical therapy student, or as a physical therapist. You'll be exactly where you need to be without ever having to quit or pull the plug on your dream. Does that make sense? Right? So that's the key, y'all. So if you ever feel like you're not smart enough, come back to this video. If you have a friend that ever feels like they're not smart enough, share this video with them or share this training with them. And if you are like, okay, this is super helpful, but I actually want more help. Like, I want more guidance. I want a step-by-step to know that I'm doing all the right things. Here's what I want you to do. Go to www.acceptedstrategy.com. www.acceptedstrategy.com. physicotherapieschool.com. Go on that page and set up a conversation with one of our team members. Let's talk to you directly, one-on-one. Let's figure out what your situation is, where you're at. Let's help you figure out what the best strategy is going to be for you to help you get into physical therapy school. And then after that, let's get to work, because you belong in this profession if this is your dream. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, including yourself, because many times, like I said, we talk to ourselves more than anyone else does. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was helpful, please let me know in the comments below what your biggest takeaway was. And then, of course, please be sure to like, subscribe, share this out as well, as we continue to serve y'all, and be on the lookout for the next training. Keep crushing it. We'll talk soon. Bye.